Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Monday, the 21st of March. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined this morning by Johnny McFarlane. How are we doing, Johnny?
Good, mate. Good. Good to be talking about a Rangers victory, given it looked for a while like it might not be.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joshua Barry was at Dens Park for us yesterday. How are we getting on, Joshua?
Yeah, same as Johnny, Derek. I think when that goal goes in, 64 minutes, the tide seems to kind of turn. But then you remember Rangers' issue this season has been draws more than defeats. So I think such an important goal in the context of the season, and especially going into an international break. So good to get the result.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we talk about that game yesterday, folks, if you're just joining us, if you're watching us on YouTube for the first time, if you hit that subscribe button, then you'll never miss a video when we go live. And if you haven't taken advantage of the Rangers Review site yet, then why haven't you? It's just £2.99 a month to support top quality journalism covering the club you love. Really quality content on there. Just head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. Okay, let's look at events yesterday then, gentlemen. It was more testing than what I think everyone imagined, given Rangers went up there last week and won convincingly in the Scottish Cup. They fell behind to a Christie Elliott goal after 6 minutes. They huffed and puffed. It was a poor first half. James Tavernier missed a penalty before Aaron Ramsey stepped up to net his first goal in Rangers colours from close range on 64 minutes. And Connor Goldson, the makeshift centre forward, netting the winner on 86 minutes. It was a game that was disrupted at various stages because of protests and sprinklers popping up and what have you. Joshua, you were there for us. It felt like a big 3 points, that one. Rangers far from their best, it's fair to say, but it's all about results at this stage of the season.
Yeah, and if you look at the numbers at the end of the game, I think they deserved it, especially given the penalty, a bit of a soft penalty. But, I guess I seen a tweet this morning, I think from contributor to the show, Gary Commody, who said, look, the VAR doesn't turn that around probably because it's not clear and obvious errors. So it's one of those ones where you kind of have got to give them all if you're going to give one, but then if you don't give any, people are just going to pull people back in the box all the time. So, but that's an issue for later on. I thought the park, compared to being there last week, the park was notably much bobblier. Van Bronckhorst seemed to say that they hadn't watered it, which I think is probably quite classic when the old firms come in to try and slow the game down. The first half, I think Rangers team selection didn't really mirror what they were trying to do because they couldn't build up. Because honestly, every time the ball went back to Alan McGregor, the whole stadium gasped. The ball could have honestly bobbled anywhere. The changes came at the right time, and the most important thing for me is both goals don't happen if you don't have Kemar Roofe in there. This team needs more goals, especially when they're playing against the team that's sitting in. Also, you need to have James Tavernier as far forward as possible at all times. I mean, the consistency with which he's performed, even after missing that penalty, to consistently take the ball in important moments, and he plays the pass into Roofe before Goldson's winner at the end as well. So yeah, lots to pick out from it, which we will on the site over the next couple of days. But just important to get the win. It was very similar to the Dundee United game, Derek, after a European game. Kind of the pressure was quite relentless. Sakala down the right wing seemed to have 100 crosses as he did at Tannadice, but so important to get that goal. And you could tell the celebrations from the bench. They knew how important that win was.
Yeah, Johnny, I was thinking when Tavernier blasted the ball over the crossbar, and they were huffing and puffing in the second half. They had more intent, of course, Rangers, and made the substitutions. But just before Ramsey scored that goal, were you thinking to yourself it's going to be one of those days again where they're going to drop points in the road?
Of course. And I totally agree with everything Josh has said. And we shouldn't let the fact the team won in the end get in the way of the truth, which is this team is in need of a structural overhaul for Scottish football. It's perfectly brilliant in Europe. We don't have to worry about how Rangers are performing in Europe. But there just isn't enough attacking threat. Now, there can be all the excuses in the world about the pitch, about the stoppages, and I'm sure we'll get onto that in a minute. But the truth is, over the course of the 90 minutes, especially in the first half, Rangers just didn't create enough good opportunities. I think the XG for the game was 3.
Yeah.
A large proportion of that, well, what's the 0.73 for the penalty? The rest of it, Connor Goldson, I'm assuming Josh would have had quite a high XG for that chance that he scored. And then Aaron Ramsey, obviously, is an enormous XG. So outside of the goals, I just don't think there's enough being created. It's the bottom team in the Premiership. Joshua sums it up well. I've been going on about it for weeks now. I think there needs to be a change of shape to get more bodies in the box. Michael Beale and Steven Gerrard didn't just happen upon this 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-2-1 that they started to use. It's because they needed to find a balance between that structured, well-organised side that we saw in Europe from Rangers and getting enough bodies into the box in the Premiership. And I still think that's a fundamental issue. And when Giovanni Van Bronckhorst comes to rebuild this side come the summer, you'll have to think about what Rangers are facing week in, week out, which is teams that want to just sit back, defend for their lives, and hit on the break. And there needs to be more goals in this team because you just can't keep getting away with this kind of performance week in, week out. Now, my feelings on it, I have to say, looking at the numbers, you go, are you being a bit harsh? Over 3 expected goals, you're maybe being a bit harsh. But I just feel that this is a repeat situation that you're seeing time and time and time again. And there's only so many times you get away with it before you get burned. And we've already seen Rangers get burned already against Motherwell, against Dundee United. So, it's a situation that does need to be rectified in the long term.
Yeah. Joshua, how much do you think it's just that coming back off that great result in Belgrade, short turnaround time, it's an early kickoff again. I thought Giovanni Van Bronckhorst would perhaps have made more changes to the starting 11 than he did. Do you factor that in, given Rangers' sort of laboured performance?
I think also it worked last week what he did, and he's very much, I think, still kind of settling upon his style and his players. I think everyone would probably say they need more goals in that team, particularly given that Morelos isn't really a prolific striker in terms of, well, as Johnny highlighted recently, I think it was 17 is his highest league total in the Scottish Premiership. So, and it worked in terms of playing Ramsey off the right last week, building up slowly. I think Dundee were better. The pitch made it, as I said, impossible to play out the pitch or play through the pitch. And then Van Bronckhorst changed it quickly to his credit. So in that regard, you can't really, I guess, criticise him because, hypothetically, if he'd went and played with 2 high and wide wingers and Rangers had just played aimless crosses into the box, everyone would have said, well, why didn't you play Ramsey and to combine with Tavernier has worked so successfully last week? I think it's at that point of the season where now everyone's fighting for their lives. Dundee are fighting for their lives more in the game yesterday than in the Scottish Cup. I don't think there's any doubt about that, given that they're bottom of the table. And it is just about results at this point of the season. But another thing I wanted to highlight was Kent Derrick, who I think has had a bit of criticism yesterday. And we're going to look at this on the site this week because I was looking at the pass map this morning and it kind of vindicated what I was thinking at the game yesterday. The number of times he got flat passes from Bassey in the first half was mental yesterday. If Kent's getting the ball in the sideline, he's got 2 people on him. It's the easiest position in the pitch to press someone at the pitch and turn over the ball. We had absolutely no chance until the second half when you're receiving at a bit of an angle, you've got someone going outside you. Otherwise, it's just an absolutely impossible task for him to impact the game offensively from there. That's the only time I think you could say play him in a central pocket when he's having to drop back into a left wing back position to receive the ball. And I think that's like a wider discussion about the fullbacks. You need Tavernier forwards. You need to just give him attacking freedom. And I think you need Bassey to kind of come inside the pitch a little bit more to allow those angle passes out. Otherwise, it's just too easy to defend and too easy to press. So I'm guessing there's a slight concern that maybe at times Van Bronckhorst doesn't seem to... I think he learns these lessons, but I still think he wants to go back to his 4-3-3. I think back to the Motherwell game or the Aberdeen game, for example. And I think when Rangers play that flat 4-3-3 and they don't have the individualism within it, it just looks terrible and boring and predictable, and there's no routes forward. And over the next 7 games, as I say, I think you just need to do what works. And what does work in this league is playing Kemar Roofe when he's fit, because he picks up positions in the box. Like for for that first goal, no one else is doing that. You even see Morelos, he's just inches away from getting that header back across goal, but he doesn't get it. Roof's the only player in that team that picks up those possessions for me. And when you're playing in such condensed space, you need him in the team.
Yeah, would you go along with that, Johnny? I think he certainly made an impact when he came on, Kemar Roof. I was perhaps surprised not to see him start the game. He looked pretty fresh in Belgrade, and Morelos does look like he needs a bit of a rest. We've seen him with that ice pack on when he was sitting off the park when he came off. He's a huge player, isn't he, Kemar Roof? Rangers need to utilise him more. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, he looked really, really sharp, and he changed the game. He changed the dynamics of the game. Just on what Joshua was saying there, I do think Rangers need to think about being more that dynamic. That's the word that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst used, I think, in recent interviews. It's this idea of being able to switch between formations in the same way they do in Europe, but in the Premiership. I think teams they know how to block off Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's setup. And I'd love to see Rangers do a lot more in terms of Sakala and Kent switching back and forth between the wings. I'd like to see Morelos dropping off more sometimes and then going and just to change it up almost. I'd like to see a movement towards a back three, as Josh has talked about, with Bassey tucking in. I just think you need to pose questions of these sides. You need to keep on making the manager think, because Scottish teams, what they're very, very good at is destructive coaching in terms of sitting in, looking to break the game. And the game was very broken for large portions yesterday. There was the build-up play was very broken. And you need to pose those questions. What Kemar Roof will give you is he gives you someone who's a natural finisher. He's the only one in that squad that I think you would just bank on in a one-on-one. You would just, maybe Hadji, but in terms of the strikers, he's the guy that you would think he'll put that away, no problem at all, if he's put through one-on-one. He's deadly. And I think they need to try and accommodate him somehow. I don't know how they do it, because you know that Morelos doesn't like to have players next to him. But it might be reverting to that sort of triumvirate, the 1-2 with Kent behind Roof and Morelos. I'm not sure, but there's just not enough threat in that box when Rangers are going forward.
Yeah, listen, Joshua, I think Fashion Sakala made a big difference on that right-hand side when he came on. His final ball at times, again, does let him down, but he's just so direct and he causes defenders so many issues. But there was a comment coming in there that some fans would like to see Kemar Roof over on that right-hand side. Would you be averse to that?
Well, we wrote about it. It's on my Twitter feeds from yesterday. We wrote about it on the site last week. And the thing that kind of surprises me about this is it's not as if Roof hasn't spent a large majority of his career playing outside the box, and it's not as if he can't receive the ball with his back to goal or combine. He did that the whole of last season. I think if you look at the role that a Ramsey or an Arfield's kind of played, yes, perhaps they're combining a little bit more with Tavernier as opposed to players in the centre of the pitch, but I don't think Roof's going to be uncomfortable receiving the ball 30 yards from goal and dropping in. I don't know if Van Bronckhorst just doesn't like his work outside the box, but I don't think it can be that, because I always think he's pretty good on the pressing front. I don't know if he just wants an extra midfielder to get the ball up the pitch. I asked him about it maybe a month ago now, I think maybe after the St Johnstone game, and he kind of said, look, it's not just about fitting your goal scorers in the team, and obviously you have to get the ball into goal scoring positions, and we're creating those situations, which is true, but I think he could do that job, so I've been surprised about that. On Sakala, tends to hammer his crosses in. Adam's right. The line I said was that he kind of just shoots, doesn't he? He just shoots across the box. But he's a bit unconventional, and that kind of tends to work, I think, when you're trying to break down a defence. I do think that his one-dimensional, always going on the right because he's not got a left foot, is starting to undermine him, because opponents know that they have to show him inside. But he still is just so quick that he can sometimes get by them anyway. And he did make an impact. And I think what he did well, actually, in the lead up to the winner, and he's kind of had a couple of good moments and a couple of maybe disjointed moments up to that point. But he took the ball off the toes of Aribo and played it quickly through the pitch to Tavernier, which was a really important pass in the game for me. Because otherwise that pass makes its way to Tavernier by the time Dundee have kind of recovered their shape a bit and maybe closed off that avenue in the middle. So a good impact, and yeah, he as again against Dundee United quite recently, his unconventional style and directness kind of just unsettles the defence. And listen, to Van Bronckhorst's credit, he changed it early. He did change it. He wasn't stubborn. I thought the midfield selection from the start probably was a little bit too, to one extreme to the other. You've not really got much. We've not got a single ball carrier in there at all, have you? Even with Glenn Kamara last week, you had someone who can do that job a little bit better. But Sakala kind of just reaffirming what everyone knows. He's a good squad option. Still not probably the final polished product to be in that starting 11 every week. But to his credit, he always seems to make something of an impact.
He's a joker in the pack, isn't he, Sakala? You introduce him, you don't know what you're going to get, but the opposition don't know what they're going to get either.
Yeah,
I think it was Adam Thornton, friend of the Rangers Review and contributor, who said on Twitter he introduces chaos, and I thought that's absolutely spot on. Sometimes chaos is good, because it's uncontrollable, and that's the element that he brings to things. I don't think he's ever going to be Brian Laudrup, is he? But he's certainly got skills in his locker that can cause problems.
Yeah. Before we talk about the protest, Johnny, Aaron Ramsey obviously got his first goal of his Rangers career. I think he was missed from that range, but he had to show great awareness and anticipation to make his way into that area of the pitch. What did you make of his performance yesterday?
I thought it was all right. I thought it was 6 out of 10. Very good anticipation, as you say, for the goal. He was the one player that just thought ahead and went beyond the ball in that moment. And that just shows you a guy who's been around at the top level for a long time. He just kind of has that sense of where the ball's going to end up. And, of course, it was a very, very simple finish. It was slightly strange because it was almost like subdued celebrations when it went in. I kind of had concerns that it was going to be called for offside or something like that. I know that's crazy because the ball went backwards, but it was just in the moment the ball went in the back of the net. It was just almost like he couldn't believe it himself that the ball had come to him. But it was a great bit of movement in terms of his overall play. There was moments that were excellent. There was a great wee bit of control and a through ball earlier in the second half, and you can clearly tell he's a guy with a bit of class. But as a few people have said, look, that pitch was not conducive to people with class. It really wasn't. It was a situation you're going to have to fight and scratch to get whatever you won, because you weren't going to be able to play through on that pitch, and that was absolutely apparent at times. There was a moment in the second half, I kind of hadn't really been paying attention to the pitch, and I noticed on Twitter there's a lot of people talking about it, and I just watched very closely as Rangers knocked the ball around the back, and the ball was bobbling all over the place, just in terms of passing it about across the back. And when you watched it closely, you could see how bad it was. But listen, I wouldn't blame Dundee for that. Like they are trying to have every opportunity. The pitch is probably struggling anyway, and they've decided not to water it, because why give Rangers that advantage? They want to spoil the game. They're fighting for their lives, and you wouldn't expect anything else.
And saying that, Joshua, for the sprinklers to pop up when Rangers are in possession of the ball in the second half, called me a cynic, but that looked intentional for me. That doesn't look like an accident in any way, shape or form. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst sort of made a light-hearted joke about it to Sky after the game. It was strange, to say the least.
Well, tinfoil hat on, Derek.
You know that Gio kind of, when refereeing decisions or things don't go his way, he's kind of very composed, doesn't tend to make a scene, and he was absolutely fuming when that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to go to that to your extent, Derek. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that it was someone falling on a button in the.
Yeah, it will have been.
I mean, as a kind of just seeing it was just hilarious, and just also hilarious, but also a little bit kind of. Scottish football doesn't need any more of those moments, does it? And on the disruption, I mean, I think kind of what everyone else has said about this, that you can understand frustration. You can understand people have to, if people feel they're not being listened to, then they'll do these type of things to when they will be listened to, which is a live televised game, but especially at the start of the second half, when Rangers are trying to build a bit of momentum, and especially given Mark Mee, I think, made subs. He made 4 subs, but he stopped the game 3 times, as you would if you're winning, to try and break it up. It was so hard to build momentum, and it certainly didn't help Hearts whatsoever.
Yeah, Johnny, beforehand, I think we all expected it. The tennis balls and the toilet rolls at the start of the game. The second half, though, for me was, for a team chasing a game in a championship race that they're behind. We've seen Alan McGregor's reaction. unnecessary for me that second half protest. There was absolutely no need for that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I don't really have a problem with the protests prior to that, although, I mean, being an old fart, I have to say, I just believe like you should keep it to one protest if you're going to make one. You know, in terms of this being an incredibly important game, that Dundee, quite rightly, because they are not wanting to give anything away, are going to try and disrupt the flow of the game. You know, the pitch is terrible. There's going to be lots and lots of substitutions. There's going to be lots and lots of attempts to slow the game down. The last thing Rangers needed was further slowdowns, further disruptions, further breaks up of play. So for me, it was the second half one was just one step too far, and I think the problem with it is that a lot of ordinary fans who don't really think about the politics behind whatever's happening at the club, you know, who won't have really been too engaged with the issue around the Sydney friendly, the guys who just, you know, are concentrating on the actual football itself will have felt that that's disruptive to the football itself. And I think Giovanni Van Bronckhorst was quite strong after the game because he's a very measured guy. He doesn't give a lot away. You know, he's complete contrast to Steven Gerrard in press conferences. He's probably not great for guys in our profession, to be honest, but he's a really good ambassador for the club in terms of the way he presents himself. But he was pretty strong on this. He said, yes, of course it was disruptive. It was disruptive. He kept on saying it was disruptive. He said it about 3 or 4 times. And he said, you know, there's got to be a balance. And I think in that second half, the balance was lost a little bit. And I have to say, I don't know about you two, I was really worried there was going to be another one. And if there'd been another one, I think it would have not gone down well. So I'm glad that they didn't do any more. They certainly made their feelings clear. I kind of felt like they'd made their feelings clear with the tennis balls in the second half. That's obviously putting a lot of pressure on the club. By the way, I still don't think the Sydney friendly is going to go ahead. So I think that, you know, everything that's come out of the club in the last couple of weeks leads me to believe that you know, there's a process ongoing there. So I'm not sure that it achieved anything really anyway, which would be my point. But listen, the fans are absolutely right to be able to voice their opinions. They're the lifeblood of the club, and they need to be able to express themselves if they feel strongly about something. That's absolutely healthy. But I think the third stoppage was just taking it a little bit too far. But as Giovanni Van Bronckhorst said himself, it's all about that balance. It's having that balance. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think you put it perfectly well there, Johnny. Okay, folks, that'll do us there. Thanks to everyone for getting in touch as ever. We've got some fantastic content on the Rangers Review site this morning. Joshua, you've got a piece on the game yesterday and a great analysis, scouting piece on Braga in the Europa League.
Yeah, I've been looking into them. I'll give you one stat, Derek, that's a bit top line. 5 penalties conceded already. So it's
a given then. Penalty to Rangers.
And just in Europe, just in the Europa League.
Just in the Europa League. Yeah, I know. So just let Ryan Kent run at them. But no, I had a look at them. So that's on the site, as well as something on the game yesterday. And obviously throughout the day we'll have lots. Looking back on the game, where the game was won, thankfully not lost, as well as all the data. So you can head over to the site and check that out.
Joshua, just one more wee tidbit.
Yes.
Do you think they've improved, Braga?
I'm happy that Trincao isn't going to be playing, because I don't know about you, but I always remember that move where he kind of turned, I think it was Barisic, turned him inside out and curled it around the post. I think it was 2-0. I mean, I don't know, because I obviously haven't watched loads of them, but what I would say is I think the level will be much, much closer. I think I watched the game against Red Star in the group stage when we played Red Star, and I think the level looked relatively similar. And you know, I think it kind of goes with the territory of recent games. If Rangers play as they have done and they can do in Europe, and the game suits them in terms of being able to hit on the counter in moments and then control it in others, then I think they can win. But can win and actually winning is two different things in that European quarter-final. So I think they'll be hopeful. I think Braga will probably also think that's the best draw they could get, and that makes for an even tie. They're only one place apart in the UEFA club coefficient, so that kind of tells you how evenly they've performed in Europe.
Yeah, cannot wait for that game.
I'm putting the link in the
chats. Yeah. Class. Okay, folks, that'll do us there. Thanks to everyone for getting in touch. If you haven't already done so, if you want to subscribe to the Rangers Review, just £2.99 a month, just head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe. We will be back again tomorrow morning. Morning, Ian. That's a fine. We'll be back tomorrow morning, but until then, enjoy the rest of your Monday.